और हमारे जो पैनलिस्ट हैं और हमारे जो चेयरपर्सन हैं वो अपने आप में बहुत शिक्षा और बहुत ज़्यादा अनुभवों को हासिल किए हुए हैं। तो मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हम सब उससे उनके अनुभवों से प्रभावित होंगे, उनसे कुछ सीखेंगे। और अब हम हमारे ख्याल से समय हो गया है, तो अब हम अपने चेयरपर्सन को सुपुर्द करते हैं ये मंच, जिससे वो कार्यक्रम का आरंभ कर सकें।
थैंक यू वेरी मच ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर श्री धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी, MOS Dr. Subhash Sarkar ji, and Honorable Chairman University Grants Commission Professor M. Jagadesh Kumar, host of dignitaries, academicians, ladies and gentlemen. Taking cue from our Honorable Prime Minister's speech yesterday, it reminds me of a proverbial expression that however much you acquire knowledge, if you don't put it into practice, you shall remain ignorant. And that's how drafting a plan but not implementing will not yield anything. And therefore, we had several rounds of discussions, and thanks to Chairman University Grants Commission, over best practices in a university. Friends, often realization comes a little late. What happens maybe after a gap of few years, the realization will come, and whatever NEP has suggested, we will practice and we will see the best practices after NEP 2020. Now, this is a very important issue. I was going through UNESCO's website. UNESCO talks about classroom equity, but NEP has gone further. Now, this equity is not limited to classrooms only. Here we have to remove discrepancies between abled and disabled. We should provide equal opportunity to the girls and boys both. We should bridge the gap between rich and poor. This is what NEP suggests. And we have very eminent panelists this afternoon. First of all, I invite Professor Kattimani, who was professor in Maulana Azad National Urdu University earlier, and now Vice-Chancellor of Central Tribal University in Andhra Pradesh. He will share with the audience crux of his ideas within a short span of time.
सबको प्रणाम। मंच पर आसीन सभी विद्वजन, मंच के सामने बैठे सभी विद्वजन, माताएं, सभी को प्रणाम। NEP talks about reservation and beyond reservation. Without reservation also, how one can excel from SEDG group, socially, economically disadvantaged groups. ऐसा करने के लिए we have to create equal opportunities to everybody to read, write and participate in sports and other core activities. So, quality foundation of education and beyond. Hostel facilities, special teaching care to the students of SEDG groups, SCs, STs, nomadic tribes, semi-nomadic tribes. They are not there in our constitution, but they are there in India. OBCs, women, transgenders, thanks to the government, Sri Modi ji, that first time transgender appeared in the arena of education. Divyanga students, differently abled, and the students who are having learning disabilities. There is a life value in tribes that is Ubuntu. हम सब मिलकर आगे बढ़ेंगे, केवल मेरा बच्चा आगे नहीं बढ़ेगा, सबके बच्चे आगे बढ़ेंगे. That is Ubuntu. That is ट्राइबल कल्चर एंड ट्राइबल एथोस, ट्राइबल मॉडल. एनईपी उसकी बात करती है. एकलव्य ट्रेडिशन ऑफ लर्निंग इज पार्ट ऑफ गुरु परंपरा ऑफ भारत. सीधा गुरु से सीखना, गुरु को नहीं देखा लेकिन उसी गुरु से सीखना. हम जैसे लोग एकलव्य परंपरा से आए हुए हैं. हम जैसे मतलब आप सभी भारत के ग्राम के जितने लोग हैं, गांव के जितने लोग हैं, हम एकलव्य परंपरा से आते हैं. एनईपी इसकी बात करती है. लेकिन एनईपी के पहले जो बात होती थी 70 बरस में, 75 बरस में, वो रैट रेस ट्रेडिशन, दौड़ना है 99.9, नहीं बेटा वो कम हुआ 100%. Ubuntu ट्रेडिशन इज पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन कल्चर. मिलकर खाओ, मिलकर रहो, ये एनईपी में कही गई है. एनईपी जैसे मैंने कहा उसको थोड़ा सा एक्सप्लेन करूं कि रिजर्वेशन देने के पहले हर जाति धर्म के बच्चों को फैसिलिटीज दे दो पढ़ने के लिए. कल यहां बैठे बैठे मैंने एक इंडियन एक्सप्रेस को एक इंटरव्यू दिया कि बॉम्बे आईआईटी बॉम्बे ने एक कोर्स शुरू किया है, इंडियन कास्ट, भारत की जातियां. तो वो पत्रकार दिल्ली से मुझे पूछा कि आपको लगता है ये सही है? मैंने कहा कि ये सही है. भारत के बारे में, भारत में जो होने वाली वैल्यूज है उसके बारे में ये पढ़ना जरूरी है. ये बच्चों के लिए जरूरी है. मैंने कहा कि बच्चों के लिए जरूरी है, वाइस चांसलर्स के लिए भी जरूरी है, प्राध्यापकों के लिए भी जरूरी है. क्योंकि जाति क्या है मालूम है, कट्टिमनी इज ए ट्राइबल फैमिली पर्सन. तो मुझे और एक को आप, जैसे मैंने सुबह प्रश्न किया ना कि आप दिल्ली के एक कॉलेज को, अमरकंटक के एक कॉलेज को एक ही मानदंड में आप वैल्यूएशन करेंगे. अमरकंटक का कॉलेज के बच्चे हुनर कितने भी अच्छे हों, डांस में कितने भी अच्छे हों, लेकिन उनके पास ये दिल्ली के श्रीराम कॉलेज के बच्चों के साथ वो लड़ नहीं पाएंगे, वो कॉम्पीट नहीं कर पाएंगे. और जो मेजरमेंट्स है ना नैक के, उसमें ये गांव के कॉलेज छोटा पड़ेगा. एनईपी बात करती है सबको, शिक्षकों को, वाइस चांसलर को, कुलपति को, सबको एक मौका दिया जाए, ओपन एनवायरनमेंट दिया जाए कि पढ़ने का, एक्सेल करने का, काम करने का और हुनर दिखाने का. क्योंकि ये कुलपति का 5 वर्ष का ही काम होता है और 5 वर्ष में उनको एक्सेल करना है. तो ये सारी व्यवस्था कैसी होनी चाहिए ये एनईपी बात करती है. एनईपी में इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी, इक्वल फैसिलिटीज दिव्यांगों की, इक्वल वैल्यूएशन एंड लाइफ लॉन्ग लर्निंग, ये एनईपी की बहुत बड़ी कंट्रीब्यूशन है. मैं यूजीसी को और सभी अपने पैनलिस्ट को, आप सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देते हुए अपनी बातों को समाप्त करता हूं. जय हिंद, जय भारत.
Thank you, Professor Kattimani. Very well suggested. I hope you see there will be many more questions from your side also. Our next speaker is Dr. Ujwala Chakradeo. She is Vice-Chancellor, SNDT Women's University, Mumbai.
Namaskar. Good afternoon. All the dignitaries, Chairman, UGC, ministers, eminent panelists, and all of you here. I stand in front of you because I am Vice-Chancellor of one of the oldest and largest women universities of not only India, but of the entire Asia probably. Therefore, in 1916, Maharshi Karve started this university with only 5 women. It was very difficult at that point of time to bring those women from the kitchen to the front room and now to the universities. That was the period when he did it. And he understood and believed in one very important aspect, that education is a tool to bring about the change in the society as well as empowering women. And that's the reason he dedicated his entire life to this cause. Here we are talking about, what is the situation different? Are the things different? My eminent panelist will talk about all other facets of diversity of India and how do we include them in education and give them the equal opportunities of education. However, I will restrict myself only to the education of women and talk to you all about how are we at our university trying to do it. We have got about 50,000 women or girls taking education in our university pan-India, because that's the special quality given to the university, facility given to the university. So the strategic goals to have this done is to create campus space sensitive to gender questions, gender equality, and freedom and problem of harassment is the first point, bringing about the gender sensitivity amongst all the faculty members or all the people who are related to the education is what we at SNDT have taken up as a responsibility, and we are doing it through MSFDA, that is Maharashtra State Faculty Development Academy of Maharashtra. So this is the strategic goal for this is to create a campus space sensitive to gender questions, gender equality, and freedom of problems of harassment. Develop a positive climate on the campus where the university will play an active role in helping women transit from protected atmosphere at home to the real life situation. There are specific needs and those should be catered to. Create institutional systems and apparatus to impart gender-sensitive education about rights and equality. Create and sustain enabling environment to ensure dignity, bodily integrity, and equality in all students for their right to study and work. Phase-wise implementation of this program has been initiated at our institution. How do we administer it? At the policy level, a zero tolerance to sexual harassment and gender discrimination, penalties for different stakeholders, treat sexual harassment as a misconduct, and then setting up the instrumental redressal mechanism. Then second, there are various stages of that. Second is the infrastructure, providing daycare services, better lighting at the campus, student support services, clean toilets, and nutrition food, and lighting, peculiar specific lighting and in the campus, and many other issues. It is at the infrastructure level, at the policy level, at the practicing these policies, and creating a culture where a respect to the mutual genders would be created is what the policy aims at. This is what I'm restricting myself to only this issue. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Let's welcome Honorable Governor of Uttar Pradesh, Shrimati Andi Ben Patel. Now, education is to bring change in the society. I think many more questions are there. I don't know. Audience will judge. So now may I request Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit from Jawaharlal Nehru University. You know, I belong to this holy city of Varanasi, but my half the heart is always in JNU.
Respected Governor, Honorable Ministers of State, Chairman UGC and my panel, Andari Mahanubavulikku na namaskaram, ellarkum vanakkam. Keeping with multilingualism, I thought I should wish you in two of the languages, which is my mother and father tongue. When we talk about equity and inclusion, the first issue that I want to flag here is the issue is whether we are STEM or STEAM or whatever it is, whatever subject we teach, do we have an Indic narrative? Like Descartes said, I am, therefore I am. Can we make narratives from Tattvam Asi? Meaning, do we have alternative, the way we look at knowledge? This is my first idea I want to place with before you. And when we talk of equity and inclusion, the problems that we face is, how do we bring in quality with quantity? Ours is a mass education system. Second, how do we mix tradition with modernity? Meaning, when we talk of tradition, how are we going to connect it to modernity? Third is, hegemonic narratives have been there in the university system. How can we make them into multiple narratives? And a place where there is ekam sat vipraha bahuda vadanti, meaning pluralism. Third, realm and region. Are we equally getting all people, especially I'm happy that the NEP speaks about those who are underprivileged and those who have been left out from the system. Then the issue of inclusion with diversity, excellence with equity, and here I would also like to flag the idea of academic integrity. I would just like, as Professor Sridhar had said, what is the micro-narrative? Micro-narrative, I would like to thank the Ministry of Education for helping JNU to be a model of inclusion with equity, because this is the only university that gives opportunity to the marginalized at a nominal fee of 10 and 20 rupees. No other university, and this is but for the idea of our Prime Minister of inclusion. We also have a deprivation index, and this is something, and JNU tries to replicate an all-India mosaic of inclusion. So these are some of the things that I wanted to flag, because I would like to end with saying JNU has been successful because we have street children and child beggars who have been our students. Sarita Mali, a student in PhD Hindi, is going to United States of America with a full scholarship. Shaunak Sen wins the Golden Eagle thing at the Cannes Festival. And then we have Geetanjali Shri winning the first Booker Prize in Hindi. So I thank the Ministry of Education. It is but for, we are a central university totally funded by the Government of India. And I think here, this is a model that can be replicated in other places. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. Now, a question of quality and quantity. So that is also to be seen as, as a big issue. Now, for brief intervention, may I now request Professor Sushma Yadav, is Commission Member UGC and former Vice-Chancellor, Bhagat University, Mahila University.
Thank you, sir. माननीय राज्यपाल महोदय, माननीय राज्य शिक्षा मंत्री सुभाष सरकार जी, अन्नपूर्णा जी, माननीय अध्यक्ष विश्वविद्यालय अनुदान आयोग, इस सत्र के अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर हसन, सभी कुलपति वृंद और शिक्षाविद जो मेरे सम्मुख हैं, सबसे पहले मैं धन्यवाद करना चाहती हूँ यूजीसी और एमएचआरडी का, परंतु समय कम है, इससे ज़्यादा धन्यवाद पर मैं नहीं लगा सकती। इसलिए जो बातें कही गई हैं उनके साथ सिर्फ मैं इतना कहना चाहती हूँ, यदि इस राष्ट्र की क्षमता को सही तौर पर संवारना है और इस राष्ट्र को महान बनाना है, तो इक्विटी और इंक्लूजन, समता और समावेश उसके लिए एकमात्र मार्ग हैं, और इसलिए उस मार्ग को हमें गंभीरता से चुनना है। यह नीति बहुत अच्छी है क्योंकि इसमें SEDGs जिनकी बात की अभी कट्टीमणि जी ने, उनको बहुत विस्तार से पहली बार बहुत ही कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव रूप में हम सबके सामने रखा गया है। लेकिन नीति कभी भी सफल तब होती है जब उसके कार्यक्रम अच्छे बनाए जाते हैं, और मैं चाहती हूँ कि हम जब कार्यक्रम इस आधार पर बनाएं तो उनको बहुत ध्यान से बनाएं, क्योंकि इन सब ग्रुप्स में, जिन समूहों की बात हम इस पॉलिसी में कर रहे हैं, उन समूहों में भी बहुत विविधताएं हैं। उन विविधताओं को ध्यान में रखना होगा ताकि एक ही नीति सबके लिए चल जाए, ऐसा नहीं हो। प्रोसीजर्स जो बनेंगी, प्रक्रियाएं हैं, वो बहुत सरल रखनी होंगी, क्योंकि बहुत फर्स्ट जनरेशन बच्चे इसमें आते हैं जिनको उन कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज़ का ज्ञान नहीं होता। जैसे सिंपल फॉर्म्स होने चाहिए। अभी बहुत से विश्वविद्यालयों के और संस्थाओं के फॉर्म्स भी ऐसे हैं जो वो बच्चे नहीं भर पाते, कई बार हमें भी उन्हें बताने में कष्ट होता है। हेल्प डेस्क इन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में होना चाहिए ताकि दे आर अवेयर ऑफ व्हाट आर द पॉसिबिलिटीज़ एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ फॉर देम। उनको जानकारी मिलनी चाहिए क्योंकि उनके परिवारों में वो वातावरण और जानकारियाँ नहीं होती हैं। यहाँ मैं बच्चियों की भी बात कर रही हूँ और बाकी सब पिछड़े वर्गों और समुदायों की भी बात कर रही हूँ। सेंसिटाइजेशन दोनों प्रकार से होना चाहिए, उनका सेंसिटाइजेशन और बाकी समाज का सेंसिटाइजेशन। और जब वो एक बार संस्थानों में आ जाते हैं, जैसे JNU है या IITs हैं, NIITs हैं, बड़े IIMs भी हैं, बड़े संस्थान हैं, तो उनके लिए रेमेडियल मेजर्स और एक बहुत सुंदर वातावरण, स्वागत भरा वातावरण उनके लिए होना चाहिए। और साथ ही साथ मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ, सुबह जो बात हुई थी इंटर्नशिप और पर्सनल कोच का जो बात थी, वो उनके लिए अवश्य होना चाहिए, हैंड होल्डिंग और मेंटरशिप। और ख़ास तौर पर फेलोशिप्स, जिस तरह से विदेशों में बहुत से विश्वविद्यालय देते हैं, उसी तरह से कम्प्रीहेंसिव फेलोशिप्स अगर हम भारत में भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकें, विच टेक्स केयर ऑफ ऑल देयर एक्सपेंसेस। और फाइनली सेंटर और स्टेट्स के बीच में सिनर्जी तो हमारे हाथ में नहीं है, लेकिन वो सिनर्जी किसी भी प्रकार से अवश्य ही डेवलप होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि मैंने बहुत सारे ऐसे प्रोग्राम्स, सेंट्रल प्रोग्राम्स फेल होते देखे अपने टेन्योर में, जब पब्लिक पॉलिसी एंड गवर्नेंस का अध्ययन कर रही थी, जहाँ सिर्फ इसलिए राज्यों ने उन नीतियों को क्रियान्वित नहीं किया क्योंकि उसमें क्लॉज था कि 5 वर्ष के बाद दे विल हैव टू अडॉप्ट दोज प्रोग्राम्स। सो दे थॉट लेट्स नॉट वेस्ट अवर मनी, वेयर विल वी गेट द मनी फ्रॉम, एंड देयरफॉर दे लेफ्ट इट। और फाइनली मैं ये मानती हूँ कि ऐसे टीचर या ऐसे वाइस चांसलर्स होने चाहिए जो सहृदय हों, सभ्य हों, सुसंस्कृत हों, सदाचारी हों, विद्वान तो अवश्य ही हों, समरसता में विश्वास रखते हों और उसे स्थापित करने का संकल्प व दृष्टि रखते हों। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर सुषमा यादव जी। उन्होंने बता दिया है कि 3 मिनट में बहुत कुछ कहा जा सकता है। प्लीज।
थैंक यू। सभागार में उपस्थित विद्वत जन के मन में यदि कोई दुविधा या असमंजस या कोई प्रश्न, कोई क्वेरी है तो बहुत संक्षिप्त शब्दों में अपने क्वेरीज को रखें और एक व्यक्ति एक ही प्रश्न पूछेगा और सर आप जिनसे वो प्रश्न होगा वो उनका जवाब।
प्लीज।
This is Professor Kishore Basa, Vice-Chancellor Maharaja Sri Ramchandra Bhansdev University in North Odisha. I come from a very tribal-dominated region and one of the most backward regions of the state, yet mineral-rich areas. When we talk of inclusiveness, to me, inclusiveness is not merely the physical presence of the vulnerable sections of the society in our campus, but I believe that inclusive implies the inclusiveness of perspectives, and that inclusiveness of perspective to the campus. Let me give you a very small example in my university, where, you know, one of the best practices of the tribal society...
You please confine yourself to the questions.
Just
only.
1 minute, sir. I'm just giving 2 comments, sir, that's all. When we talk of inclusiveness, I'm saying that we have to learn from the tribal society. We have to shun our big brother attitude and to accept as their partners of ours this thing. This is what we have done in our campus. One of the best practices of the sacred groves of the tribal society has been implanted in our campus. This is number 1. Number 2 is, in a backward region, we can identify the problems, and then we can bring the big centers. For example, we have identified a forest fire in Simlipal region, and we have invited Bhabha Atomic Research Center to take care of the problem. So these are the 2 points I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
I just want to tell you that we have to change. So what is the roadmap? Because you have given a lecture, what is the roadmap? UN Millennium Goals say hunger index and equity gender bias. That was 1999. Nothing has happened. Today, if you ask UN what is the gender bias and what is the hunger index, probably it is worse than what is 2000. So we should have a roadmap and we have to implement. Advice. I think we should all be example of following gender bias, and in our university we should not. When I joined MBBS in 1970, 25% the Odisha government has got girls. Today that 25% doesn't exist.
Sir,
So no, I am just telling, the things which are exist in 1970 has gone because people say it should be merit based.
सर एक्चुअली यहाँ सभी विद्वत जन हैं और सभी सब कुछ जानते हैं, बस क्वेरीज, छोटी छोटी क्वेरीज. प्लीज सर एक क्वेश्चन आपकी तरफ से और आ सकता है यदि कोई पूछना चाहे.
Yes, please.
We have the policies from the government side, we all implement it, but there are some local issues where I think the universities should be provided more autonomy so that they can have more inclusions. It's depending upon their situations. Thank you.
थैंक यू सर. अध्यक्ष महोदय से अनुरोध है कि वो आप प्रश्नों का उत्तर के साथ अपना संक्षिप्त अध्यक्षीय भाषण के साथ इस कार्यक्रम को, इस सत्र को समाप्त. ओके, कुछ क्वेश्चंस आप और कर सकते हैं, अभी आपके पास समय है.
I have a question to any of the panelists. There is also a new dimension of inclusivity that's come up, especially after the pandemic, the learning loss which has to be compensated. So amongst the existing students, there is now one section that feels a little excluded from the main teaching learning mechanism because of the learning loss that they have suffered in the last 2 years. So how are we going to include them from the knowledge dimension and bring them into mainstream?
Please, you can answer this question.
So one question.
Yes, one question from this side.
Sir, I have one question.
इसका लर्निंग लॉस का जो बात है ना.
Yeah, I want to ask. I am Sanjay Srivastava.
I'm talking. Please. So students have learned from society. It is one way. It is not a loss. It is a gain. It's a gain. And education का मतलब केवल स्कूल जाना, कॉलेज जाना, यूनिवर्सिटी जाना, घर आना, कॉलेज जाना, ये है ना, वो अनपढ़ के समान है. ये साइंस ने सिद्ध किया है. जब इसमें पेंडेमिक में बच्चे स्कूल नहीं गए, वो खेत गए, भैंस चराने गए, गाय चराने गए. मैं चराता आया हूं. तो समाज में काम करते करते उनकी बहुत सारी पढ़ाई हुई. थैंक यू.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
One question.
Just a very small.
Just one question. Mr. Chairman,
Just
Yes.
please hold on. Just a small anecdote. That COVID-19 pandemic has been a disguise for all of us, and even across the ocean also. We have to come out of that situation. Because, we have to rebuild, and that's how NEP is suggesting. NEP 2020 is advocating for you to evolve mechanism in order to have outreach to the remotest possible areas. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
This is Sanjay Srivastava.
Yes,
from Allahabad, Nehru Bharati, Vice-Chancellor there. I have a small question to raise. We are talking about inclusion and equity. As per one article published, more than 70% of the central government grant is given to less than 3% institutions of national importance. Fortunately, a representative from JNU is there who talked about the fees of 10 rupees and 5 rupees. And there are many institutions which are getting zero aid from UGC or from the government. Is this policy is going to...
I'm sorry, this is not the point of discussion here.
This is...
You can discuss, this issue you can discuss at
this is related with inclusion and equity?
Inclusion,
okay,
yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have one small query. I am Professor B.P. Veerabhadrappa from Kuvempu University, Karnataka. My observation is when Dr. Ahluwalia in 11th plan document talked about inclusive growth, taking two considerations, education and also health. In the recent new education policy, Dr. Kasturi Rangan talks about that only 26% of the population are getting the higher education. I think particularly in the context of taking scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, backward caste, backward communities, as what Professor Kattimani talked about, tribal communities, there is a great dire necessity before governments, both state governments and the central government in the national education policy, to take this education to those sections of the population which really need education and also upliftment. And in that context, the governments do have major responsibility. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
ओके, यदि किसी के पास और कोई छोटी सी क्वेरी है तो वो पूछ सकता है.
Just hold on, she will reply.
Yes.
Basically, I think the Shastra University Vice-Chancellor was talking about digital haves and digital have-nots. And I think that is also a major bridge that we will have to do it. Because when I was in Pune, we were doing online. And I had several students who told me, Madam, we don't have connectivity. I'm sitting on top of a tree to get the connectivity. So yes, this is a major issue, and you're right, when we talk of digital education, we will have to do that. And the query on JNU, let me tell you, sir, we get only as much as other universities. That was an old story.
मैडम, आप कुछ पूछना चाहती हैं? प्लीज. यस. बहुत संक्षिप्त में पूछिएगा.
सभी को प्रणाम हमारा. मैं फैकल्टी ऑफ एजुकेशन बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी से डॉक्टर पूनम सिंह खरवार. मैं ये बताना चाह रही हूँ कि इंक्लूज़न और इक्विटी की बात करते हैं, लेकिन जब हमारे यहाँ प्राइवेटाइजेशन इतना तेज़ हो गया है और प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटीज़ खुल रही हैं जिसमें कि मनी रिजर्वेशन की बात हम कह सकते हैं कि जिसके पास मनी है वही वहाँ पढ़ेगा, उस आधार पे जो हमारे आप सोशल और इकोनॉमिक बैकग्राउंड मतलब वीकर सेक्शन की बात कर रहे हैं, उनको कैसे अपलिफ्ट कर सकते हैं? वहाँ क्यों नहीं हम रिजर्वेशन दे रहे हैं? वहाँ क्यों नहीं हम उनको फीस माफ़ी की दे रहे हैं? वहाँ सीटें खाली रह जाती हैं, नीट से भी नहीं भरती हैं, सारे प्राइवेट मेडिकल कॉलेजेस की सीटें खाली गई हैं. हम क्यों नहीं वहाँ ऐसी बातें करते हैं जिससे कि इक्वली इक्विटी आ जाए? थैंक यू सर.
अध्यक्ष महोदय से अनुरोध है कि वो अध्यक्षीय भाषण में आप कुछ क्वेश्चंस के आंसर देते हुए इसका संक्षिप्त विवरण करें. प्लीज.
Friends, I'm sure there are many more questions, in fact, in your mind. Yes, in one single journey, I don't think we would be able to answer all the questions. And there, you have to wait for a while. It's not that, India is too big and too diverse. Diversities and differences are enormous. But yes, the aims and objectives of life also differ from person to person, individual to individual, group to group, society to society. How to bridge this gap? I think it's a wonderful effort when the policy is revised, when a new education policy, national education policy, it is not meant for one single state, rather, for entire India, and see the result. What we have to do, we have to keep talking, keep discussing, and then we are supposed to assess the situation that where we are. But there must be a little gap. At the point of a start, you cannot question all these, which you have in your mind. Now, so many eminent scholars spoke about it, equal opportunity. Of course, we want equal opportunity to be given to all. सबके बच्चे आगे बढ़े. सर कट्टीमनी अभी कह गए, सबको मिल बांट कर हर चीज़ शेयर करनी चाहिए। बहुत अच्छी बात है। अगर ये स्पिरिट हमारे पास है तो हम ज़रूर आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। एजुकेशन इज़ टू ब्रिंग चेंज इन द सोसाइटी। डॉक्टर उज्ज्वला, Chakradeo, he says, and of course, education is the only way to bring the society and to bring change in the society. Then only we can bring up our society. So change is also important, but to what extent this change is possible? I mean, that you have to think. And then, of course, Professor Pandit, that quantity and quality, you see. I mean, these are, interconnected bogies. You see. As we say, that when we talk about democracy, what democracy is, there are three major interconnected bogies of a democracy, where, freedom is not complete without social justice. Social justice is not complete without providing rights to the citizen. So all interconnected bogies, when they are brought to the floor, brought to the line, then they will start working. And therefore, we have several questions, but we let these questions put together and draw a result. I think NEP is doing very well by provoking your conscience, that you start questioning, and therefore नीति सफल, जैसा कि प्रोफेसर सुषमा यादव ने कहा, नीति सफल उसी समय होगी जब आप उसके कार्यक्रम बनाएंगे. And here I leave it to you. Please explore the possibilities for implementation of what is drafted and what is to be implemented. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू सर. 6 सेशन समाप्त होता है.